The future Paradox Pokemon are a very mixed bag. Some take advantage of the concept to create Pokemon that are a step above their original forms in a lot of ways. Others feel like they took the base design, made it a robot, and called it a day. But no future Paradoxes were more disappointing than the Swords of Justice, who hit us with the biggest bait and switch of all time. Once you beat the game, you're able to peer into the Scarlet or Violet book. In these books, we were treated to two sketches. Paradox Pokemon fusions representing the quadrupedal legendary trios from Johto and Unova. These drawings were a really cool way of creating hype for the DLC, until we actually saw them. Iron Leaves was the first of the three to be revealed, and they really did it a disservice by pairing it with Walking Wake, one of the coolest Pokemon to come out of Gen 9 period. The comparisons were inevitably going to be made, but even taking it in a vacuum, this thing feels so lazy. Some future Paradoxes have a shared flaw of looking really bland in their static poses, but when you actually see them in motion, you can see what the designer was going for, which makes up for the dullness a little. That is not the case for the Swords of Justice. Iron Leaves grows these three swords out of its body while attacking. Even with the protracted blades, it's very meh and not at all intimidating, regal, or anything that celebrates Virizion. They didn't build on the idea of the Swords of Justice having these retractable energy blades in a creative way, they just gave her two more. A very superficial surface level approach to building on the original that is an unfortunate through line of the future Paradoxes. Iron Valiant is a good example of building on a base idea to create something even cooler. It takes Mega Gallade's arm blades, maxes out its dexterity, and turns it into a double-sided pole arm. But even if you ignored the blades, the design proper is also just really cool. It takes the best of both designs to create what is probably the best future Paradox Pokemon of the batch. You may think it's unfair since this is a fusion of two existing Pokemon, and my counter would be, we should have been able to fuse these three. It would make up for the lack of creativity. They turned Raikou into a fucking sauropod. They could have done anything, but they went, nope, let's just make it a robot, which really only works for Tyranitar since it's Mechagodzilla. It's fun. Iron Crown is the best of the three because it at least maintains that intimidating leader energy of Quabalion. It still suffers from the same issues as the others, but in a vacuum it's whatever. Certainly doesn't hold a candle to Raging Bolt, who was revealed at the same time, but it's the least offensive of the three. The Boulder is the one I have the biggest problem with. It's honestly the most boring of all the future Paradoxes. A big contributing factor is Terrakion's base colors. The three take on the color palettes of the originals and turn any white or gray parts into more metallic robotic features. For the first two, these metallic parts serve as highlights for their more vibrant primary colors. But Terrakion is mostly gray and brown, which works for the original, but when transferred to Iron Boulder, it feels very bland, as if someone stopped painting it halfway through. I think the designer knew this, which is why they took the little bit of orange on Terrakion and made it much more prominent throughout Iron Boulder, but it's still just meh. Even if the colors were more visually appealing, its design is still the main problem. Terrakion is very menacing, which cannot be said about the Boulder. Its anatomy looks really wonky, it's way too round and smooth, where other future Paradoxes play around with texture. I will say, the way it implements the protracting blades is the coolest of the trio. Its antlers crush clothes like an insect, which is a cool evolution of the base design. It's what I wanted to see in these forms, but that only accounts for its attack animation. As soon as it's done, it goes back to being the Boulder.
The Boulder's gonna win this in a landslide.
Game Freak seems like it's going to continue revamping older legendaries, which is awesome, but it sucks that this was them revisiting the Swords of Justice. I hoped all the way to the release of Indigo Disc that we would somehow be able to fuse them. This is a design that celebrates the original trio. Both of these fusions are overwhelmingly cool, and them not being realized is such a shame, especially when you consider how lazily the Paradox Pokemon were implemented in the DLC. They're part of an afterthought Pokédex-filling side quest with very bland static encounters. Imagine if they put as much effort into a fun questline capped off with a boss fight against these fusions like we got with Blood Moon or Saluna. Imagine if a lot of things were different with Scarlet and Violet. You can make a feature-length video of all the questionable choices made in Gen 9. Hopefully in 20 or so years, when Game Freak gets around to remaking these games, they have these three do a fusion dance and bring this sketch to life. But until then, I'm going back to pretending like this trio doesn't exist.